Hi, this is Michael Uslan. You're listening to Batman on Film.
I'm vengeance.
I have given a name to my pain.
The Batman.
Always waiting for some Batman to save you.
It's simple. We kill the Bat of Gotham. I'm Batman.
Welcome to episode number 227 of the original Batman on Film podcast. I am Bill Ramey, the founder of Batman on Film. And on today's podcast, we have a guest host, JJ Hodges from the For Comic Junkies podcast, with an interview with the one and only Todd McFarlane from McFarlane Toys. And of course, his work in comic books with Spawn, Spider-Man, and Batman. Without further delay, here's the interview.
Hello, Todd. Thank you so much for joining me today for Batman on Film. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, JJ, I appreciate you having me. Hope things are going well for you this year.
So far, so good. You know, can't really complain. Luckily, it's a little cold. You're out in California, aren't you?
No, I'm in Phoenix right now. Yep.
Oh, well, then you don't know what it's like for the cold. So lucky for you. So this is exciting. We've got 30 years of McFarlane Toys this year. Am I right about that?
Yeah, we started in 1994. Yeah, the very first toy fair in February. Yep.
Wow, that's incredible. What made you want to go with your own brand as opposed to, just going with Mattel or Hasbro or whatever for Spawn and other such things?
Originally at the beginning, I actually talked to all the big companies in advance. And as I've said before, I just didn't get a feeling that they quite understood the brand, right? I mean, again, it's a guy from the pit of hell, right? So not your run-of-the-mill sort of normal thing that you would sell to 5-year-olds. But I felt like, and rightly so, they've had a good track record. They were just going to put it in the conveyor belt that sort of works over and over and over for them.
Sure.
And I didn't think Spawn would do very well. In all honesty, I thought it would go in, it would fail, and then they'd sort of give me my property back to me, and it'd be damaged goods. And it's always hard to get a second chance when you say, "Hey, the first one didn't work." So my initial sort of conversation with all of them was, I think we need to make non-traditional toys and sell them in non-traditional places. But I could see very quickly that they're not big corporations that do very well, make a lot of money, aren't built for experimenting a lot. So I just said, I made a couple phone calls and I go, how hard is it to make toys? And we started, and we've been doing it for 30 years. So
that's pretty incredible because I think you were kind of an innovator for that because nobody else had really done that. At least not.
Well, let's talk about what that is, right? So for people, I mean, again, we're going back 30 years. At that time, there were no real quote unquote collectible toys out there. There were no toys that were aimed at kids that were over 7 years old for the most part.
Right.
And I'm a collector, you're a collector. I mean, you know how it is. You're looking for cool stuff, right? And the definition of cool, I think, is more sophisticated as you get older. So you can't make the same toy. What was happening was that they were expecting, 15, 25-year-old, 35-year-olds to buy the same toys that the 7-year-olds were. And it did okay. But I go, why don't we make them cooler than that, right? Why don't we make them cooler? And two, why don't we pick brands that are more relevant to our age? And I knew they weren't doing a lot of R-rated stuff, because most everything was based on TV and movies back then, and they weren't touching that range. And I go, shoot, right? There's a ton of movies that we all watched that were R-rated that I think there's a big audience that will buy these figures. You just have to put it in the right content, right? It's not so much that you're buying a toy as I think that you're just saying, I like this brand, right? Like when you wear a hat with a logo, right? You're saying something. And when you get a shirt with a logo, you're saying that like you kind of support it, you like it, right? Well, when you buy a toy, it's not that you're 25, 28, 38 and you're a geek and it's like you got Arrested Development. You're just saying, I like this, right? So if you happen to have a Matrix toy or you happen to have a Predator toy or a Simpsons toy, all you're telling people who happen to walk by your desk is you happen to like those shows, right? Cool, right? You're not on your hands and knees playing with them all day long. So they're just sort of badges of honor, and nobody was really doing that. And luckily, the big goal was if somebody could go out there and show that it would work, and I volunteered. That I thought that there would be other companies that would soon follow. And here we are, 30 years later, where in 1994, maybe there were 4 toys at Toy Fair that I wish I had in my collection. And now you go to Toy Fair or you go to San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of toys I wish I had by dozens of different companies. So somebody just had to sort of say there's another path, and I think part of the reason we get a lot of credit is that we were one of the sort of the early frontier to take those paths. So
I've always been a fan too, and you had sports figures originally, and now the past few years you've had this DC brand that has just kind of exploded. Which is incredible. Where did let's start with you. What's your kind of secret origin with DC? This year is going to be the 85th anniversary of Batman. So let's say DC and Batman as well. What's your secret origin there?
I don't think I'm much different than anybody else, right? You're a kid, you grow up, and then there are things that you sort of get hit by like a thunderbolt and go, oh my gosh, right? So for me, Batman, the first oh my gosh moment was, because I wasn't collecting comic books when I was a kid, was the TV show, the Adam West, Burt Ward TV show, right? And it would come on twice a week, and you'd get the 2-parter. It was like, and there's the Batmobile and the costumes and the helicopter, and then pretty soon this really sexy lady came on, Batgirl, oh man. Right, my first love, right? I knew I liked girls when I saw her in that tight outfit, and then there were just, I don't know, it was fun, and then you just through attrition you get to know the top, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man's, right? All the big characters just sort of swim around, and sometimes because they're on TV or they're on in movies, and then later on become video games and other ways that you can actually get to them. And then now, and obviously the toys were there, right? But not as plentiful, not as many outlets, and not quite as sophisticated. But Batman, I of all the characters, I've always said, other than Spawn, he's my guy, so I got a bias towards my character.
Sure.
But minus my character, I think Batman's the coolest guy, and for me, he's cool because, like, I relate to him in the fact, not on any other level other than he just doesn't give a shit about his money, doesn't really give a shit about his prestige, Doesn't really care whether he's got a bunch of girls flocking over him. He just goes home at the end of the day and he waits. He waits till about 2:30 in the morning. And then he puts on a black costume and he goes and scares the shit out of the bad guys. Right?
Yeah.
And it's just, and to me, it's that mentality of like, if they're going to scare us, I'm going to scare them back a bit. Right.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, I'm human. And if they push me out a window and I don't have my batarang, I splat. Right. Superman and arguably Flash and Green Lantern and Spider-Man, they don't all do that because they're not human.
Right.
So I go, he's doing this and he has more at risk, I think, than all the other heroes because he could splat on the ground if he doesn't have the right tool with him. So.
Do you have a favorite version of Batman through the comics or movies or whatever?
Yeah. Marshall Rogers and Len Wein did a run on Detective Comics that to me was, and again, Neil Adams did some Batman stuff that I'm sure if I was collecting at that time would have been the moment for me.
Sure.
Because when I saw it later, I was like, oh my gosh. But for me, when those detective issues came out with Marshall Rogers, Terry Austin was inking most of it too, and Terry Austin at that time was the inker on the X-Men. And to me, he was the best inker too. But Marshall was doing this really cool big cape. He was doing capes like I've never seen before. And he made Batman seem really mysterious to me. So that was it. And then later on, Bill Sienkiewicz did a couple of sort of short stories where it was really sort of dark and almost he was like a monster. And so those moments, sort of hit me pretty good. Jim Aparo, who was doing Brave and the Bold, I just thought he had a classic, good looking line, and I just got a kick out of seeing Batman with other superheroes too.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my game when I was collecting comic books, those guys. But Marshall Rogers at the top of the list.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about the cape because I actually have the Funko cover over here of your Batman with the huge cape flowing over him. So it's kind of interesting to think, that was your inspiration, and then I'm not an artist, but years later I get this thing that's your thing, So I would say,
no. See, the thing is that I have this theory that most artists are just an amalgamation of all the things that we see. Nobody sort of creates in a vacuum, right? Everything you see is somehow done. So I could almost go through a list and say, hey, here's the people who did the cool sci-fi stuff I kind of was impressed with. And here's the people who did like anatomy that I liked. And here's the people who did, action, when people got punched that I liked. And here's somebody who did explosions the best. And here's somebody who did the capes the best. And so what ends up happening is you sort of cobble all those, you put them together, you sort of blend it all up. And when you spill it out, then that becomes my style. It's just boring. I know intellectually who I'm sort of inspired by.
Yeah.
But you don't see it because it's just a little bit of everybody mixed into this new concoction that becomes, everybody's personal style. And so to me, I was like, man, I like capes. So when I did capes, I go, I'm like, Marshall Rogers made them big. I'm making them bigger. Right. So everything was like, whatever they did, I'm going to try and do bigger than or more. If they're going to put 100 rivets, I'm putting 200 rivets on this stuff. So that was it. Just being young and youthful.
It's obviously worked in your favor. When you think of, big capes, I don't think it gets much bigger than Spawn, who, takes up.
I was able to continue it. Yeah. I took it from Batman into, because look at, and it's not the comment I'm about to make. The Batman isn't about capes, but the theory is the same. I like characters with capes because it gives a sense of volume to the character, right?
Yes.
So all of a sudden, instead of standing there, it's like a bird. When you see a big bird, it's kind of okay when it's standing there, but when it spreads its wings, right? An eagle's cool perched in the tree, but an eagle's grander when it opens its wings. So to me, that's what capes are. And we draw on a flat piece of paper, 2D, and our goal is to make things look three-dimensional, right? Foreground, background, middle ground. And so to me, it was like, oh man, the cape was the easiest thing to give you that false sense of volume. So when I went and did Spider-Man, obviously Spider-Man had no cape. So it was also one of the reasons for me sort of creating the webs that I did on Spider-Man, was because I wanted him to be swinging and they'd be all over, which was the illusion of like, that was basically just his cape to me. It was like, whoosh, I'm going to make all this stuff so that he seems like he's got way more presence than he actually does. And then eventually jump into Spawn. I go, oh, I'm back to my cape guy again. And oh, by the way, yeah, we're gonna make the biggest cape in the industry here. Here we go.
Well, if it's a competition, everybody's already lost because Spawn wins there.
Yeah, because if you go any bigger than what I've done, then it becomes ridiculous.
It'll be a hot air balloon at that point. It's funny you saying all that about capes. I had a girlfriend in high school who was a great artist, but she had trouble with feet. So when she would draw Batman, she would just draw his cape over his legs.
Sure.
So she'd never have to draw his feet.
No. First rule that you learn as a young artist is, if in doubt, black it out. Right. And in the old days, they literally meant that. That meant put a shadow over it, or put them in, like, just hide it. Basically, hide it. Right. Yeah. And so what it meant is, if you can't draw feet, make sure they're standing in tall grass. Make sure that they've got a cape cutting in front of them, right? You can't draw hands. Make sure they're holding a cup of coffee all the time. I mean, there's just way. You can't draw eyes. Make sure they got glasses on, right? You stay away from some of your weaknesses at the beginning of your career. So yes, right. That's also part of the reason I like capes. Is, I mean, you're just talking a moment ago about the Funko cover. I think it's from the cover of Batman 423. That is literally a cape drawing. If there's no anatomy, there's no anatomy there. I mean, Batman's head's there, right? Yeah. The young woman's there. I think you see one of her hands, but that's it, right? So I was able to create an image that, now 30 years later, people still like. And I didn't have to draw any anatomy of two human beings, essentially. Why? Because I put a cape and people were like, oh man, Todd, that's so cool. What were you thinking of? I know exactly what I was thinking of when I did that cover. They had phoned me late in the day and said, hey, Todd, you want to do a Batman cover? And I was like, oh, man. I was over at Marvel, and they said, hey, I'd like to do some Batman. And I go, yeah, cool. And they go, but you got to have it done by tomorrow. So I don't know. I didn't have time to draw a bunch of city and three people on it with a bunch. I go, okay. So I was doing a bunch of graphic stuff anyways on my pages. And I go, how can I do a cool graphic image of Batman that look good that I can get done in 6 hours, because I got to get it in the mail. And ends up being one of the ones that people go, oh man, Todd, that's so cool, right? If they'd given me 2 days, it wouldn't have looked like that. So
that's really funny. But it's what's the saying that your time is the necessity of invention or creativity or something like that. So it's funny.
And again, the short version of that is you come up with happy accidents.
Yes,
so that's what this one was. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you about your DC line, which is I'm a huge fan of. I have tons of them. Unfortunately, they're not positioned where I can show them off in my house here. But I'm amazed by you have your Batman, your Superman, your regular characters. And then suddenly, I get an email that there's a Speeding Bullets Batman, from one story, almost 30 years ago. Where does the inspiration come to be like, well, let's not just do the regular guys, or even just like the Adam West Batman in addition. Let's do these one-time awesome, cool-looking Batmans and see how they sell.
Yeah. So you sort of said it in your answer there. A couple of things. One is we have access to the library from 1936 up to today, right?
Okay.
From Action Comics #1 to today. And for the most part, I mean, there's a couple exceptions, but not only the library of comic books, but video games, TV shows, and movies all the way through, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine how many thousands, probably tens of thousands of options we have.
Yeah.
Right? So now you get to sort of call through it and just pick it for different reasons. One of the reasons is because they're popular, right? Oh,
Sure.
hey, Batman and Robin are popular, or Superman's popular, Spider-Man's popular, Iron Man's popular. You do the popular stuff. And then the next one is the one that you mentioned, which is just like, oh man, these super awesome looking ones. We're still in the toy business, and there's still, I think there's still, you have to pass an eye test, right? So if you're gonna not do an A-list character or somebody that everybody would know in a heartbeat, whether that's you and I or a 7-year-old and his mom buying something for a birthday present. If they don't know it, then the next best thing to give them is something that just looks cool.
Yeah.
Right? That they're walking by going, oh my gosh, that's awesome. Can I have that? And that should be to me, your second impulse, right? And then for you and I, we're geeks, so we can argue about like the B players and the C players, which one of those we'd like to see, right? But I still, even when we're talking about the B and the C characters, I still side with what do they look like in package when an average layman is going to be walking down the aisle looking at them, right? Yeah. So it can't just be, I mean, we've done plenty that I could argue, we did for us, the collectors, us geeks,
Sure.
but again, to have a robust, healthy business, I still have to hope that what we're doing will appeal to kind of everybody a little bit in some way, right? The moms go, oh my God, my kid likes Batman. That looks cool. It looks like a lot of plastic, good value. Boom. The kid will go, oh man, look at that. Batman in a robot costume. Super awesome. Right. And then you and I who are geeks, we can get something else that's a little more obscure in the Batman mythology, and we'll buy it. So I'm constantly sort of juggling all of it, and at times hoping that sometimes one character can basically serve the purpose for all three of them.
Hey y'all, it's Bill Ramey, founder of Batman on Film. Let's take a quick pause in this podcast for these words from our sponsor.
I think, to your point earlier about like it looking cool, you don't get, with no offense to Spawn, you don't get much cooler than how Batman looks just normally, just a great, simple look. And something that I was really excited about, again, going into the kind of, I use the term obscure loosely, you have the Batman and Robin figures, which just, I'm sitting here going, look, like that movie was the 66 show to me when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
But so, anyone who kind of tries to, shit on it a little bit, I'm like, no, that's the exact same thing that show was. So when you're like, oh, we're introducing these figures, then suddenly it's like, well, hang on, I got to update my Christmas list here. Was that just, a part of it for you, thinking like, well, even the obscure stuff, even the stuff that quote unquote nobody likes, people still like. So we're going to make it.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You put Batman at the top of any, I don't care. It's like Batman Beyond, Batman, The Dark Knight, Batman, it's that word Batman that's going to drive it. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been in the toy aisle plenty of times. Parents walk in and they say, hey, you got any Batman toys? My kid wants a Batman toy. And the person goes in the back room, comes back, and they come back with a Joker. And they're like, no, I need a Batman toy. And they go, this is a Batman toy. They go, no. I need a Batman toy, right? Yeah, even if they give you Robin, the mom would go, no, my son said Batman, right? Yep. Just like you go, hey, mom, can you give me a Shrek toy? Mom and dads are very myopic. They're going to get Shrek. They're going to go, no, Donkey. I can't take Donkey home. But you mentioned Spawn earlier. One of the things in Spawn is that like there are many Spawns throughout time, right? And I created these sort of different versions of them. Right, but I got to tell you, in recent times, both Marvel and DC with Spider-Man and with Batman have far exceeded. Like I thought I was pushing my luck with like 5, 6, 7 Spawns, and now there's like 50 Batmans and 50 Spider-Mans and whatever. From a toy end, I don't know from a comic book collecting if it gets overwhelming, but from a toy end, it gives me again, as part of having access to that library, it gives me a lot of options within the umbrella of Batman.
Yeah.
Right. And if Batman's cool, which he is, and Batman, a lot of people like Batman, which they do, myself included, then you just go, oh, cool. Okay. I don't have to go now to the D characters. I can now go to this iteration of a character based off the Batman mythology.
Right.
And again, and even within that, we're going to rank our favorite Batmans, right? Which
right.
They're the coolest, just like we're going to do with our Spider-Mans and we're going to do with our Spawns, right? So you go, oh, okay, cool. I mean, Superman even has, to some degree, has about 15, 20 iterations of it. For me, that's good. That's good on the toy business because I can keep making some of the A guys, A heroes, if you will, and not have to go away from the brand name of that we all know, right? So I can do Batman 1, Batman 2, Batman 3, Batman 4, all the way up to 50, and you would have 50 different figures that are still in the Batman universe. And I could do, again, 20, 30 of them for Superman, like I said. So,
well, it's such a awesome time that we live in. By we I mean geeks, right? I'll never forget when The Dark Knight came out. I had a friend who texted me and said, "I get why you like comic books so much now." And I said, "Yeah, because they're telling really awesome they're telling very human stories in a science fiction-y way, which is how it's always been."
When I was young, I tell you what was interesting to me when I was young was I started collecting when I was a comic book when I was 16 years old, and people then would sort of, when they found out, they were like, "Tom, you're 16. What are you collecting comic books? Like you're Arrested Development." But I'd ask them, I go, oh, okay, yeah. Well, so what are you guys doing this weekend? And they're going, "Oh man, we're gonna go see the James Bond movie where the car jumps off the cliff and then lands on this thing, and then we're gonna go see Indiana Jones where this thing happened, and then we're gonna go see Battlestar Galactica, and then we're gonna go see some Star Wars, right?" So it was. I always thought it was weird that they were able to go see they were able to do their fantasy, but as long as it was in a theater, I guess it was okay. Yeah. And I was doing my fantasy; it just happened to be on paper, right? Mm-hmm. And so I don't think it's an accident that since the advent of sort of the big superhero movies that have opened up the gates to everybody pretty much, that all of a sudden now it's okay to like superheroes. It's okay to say you're a comic geek, and people are like, "Oh man, that's awesome." Where when, before all that, you were a social outcast a little bit. But now everybody's under the tent, right? And that, which is good. I don't begrudge it. I think it's good. Every time the tide goes up, all of our boats go up with it. So I'm like, cool. The more the merrier. Let's go.
There's you're kind of an embarrassment of riches when it comes to these things. And who would have thought that we'd get one Aquaman movie, let alone two, where he's not considered it's not a movie that's making fun of him at all. That's wild.
What do you mean, Blue Beetle? Who would in their wildest dream would have thought there'd be a Blue Beetle movie? Right? Yeah. Again, of all the characters, like Guardians of the Galaxy. What do you mean? When I was at Marvel, Guardians of the Galaxy was a C-rate group. Book didn't even sell. I think it was bi-monthly even. It didn't even have a monthly book, right? It was like, right. Who cares about it? But again, some of them have broken out. Not all of them. There's sort of your A characters, and then you've got like this big group of eclectic characters you come in that we all can rank. Again, before the movies came out, I wouldn't have said that Doc Strange was an A character either, right? Mm-hmm. And they somehow were able to elevate him up. And again, all characters aren't going to do it. I think, in all honesty, it's one of the things you're seeing right now in the movies, which is why some of the movies are a bit soft, the superheroes, because I think that the moviegoers are now acting exactly like or close to what the comic book people did was, oh, hey, we'll support the A characters a lot more. And then when you go to the B characters, we're going to buy less of it, right? And then if you go to C, we're going to buy even less of it. Like, yeah, I get it, right? I mean,
Sure.
You put out a Captain Marvel #1 comic book in the middle of a big event series going on in comic books, and you put half the Avengers in that book, and it's a #1, sure, that's going to work. But you put her in issue #2 away from all that, the sales are going to drop, and essentially it's what they did in the movie. And it's like, yeah, that's how it works in a comic book, right? Everybody's got a limited amount of resources. You can't sort of buy every title in every comic book. So historically, they're going to buy way more Batmans and Superman and Flash than they are, Mr. Miracle or Lobo. It's just how it works.
Well, it's clear that, your love of not just the characters, but making sure that they're, like you said, the figures have to be cool. So this isn't just like a hunk of plastic you're handing to a kid and the kid's imagination is going to go wild. Like our imaginations don't have to do much work with some of these, that you make. So I appreciate that there's, points of articulation, and they, they're little statues that I can move around the house or, put on my desk at work. And like you were saying before, it's a conversation starter. It's like, hey, that Batman looks a little different. What's his story? And tell the story.
We did Ted Lasso toys, right? So put Ted Lasso there, and people go, "Oh, you saw that show? Oh my God, yeah, it's super funny. Have you seen both seasons?" Like, you're not sitting there going, "You collect toys." It instantly gets you into a conversation, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a Predator toy, or you've got something from Dwayne Johnson or whatever. Like, I mean, you just jump into it. It's almost like talking sports, except for you're talking about entertainment instead. That's okay. Like, I talk sports a lot too. Like, who's better? What's the best team? Why did that guy get it? Like, we have all the same silly conversations, and it's just sort of fun to have it. And when people say, "Todd, how do you pick your characters, or how do you pick your sports figures?" Arguably, it's the same way as people that go out for dinner or sitting at the bar and have the same debate about movies and sports, right? I'm no different than anybody else. I'm no smarter, but I think that most of us are gonna. If you're saying let's do a top 10 of something, that we're gonna probably be, you and I would probably be common with 5 or 6 of our picks, and it's the bottom 4 that we're gonna get into the good conversation.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What are you talking about? Why are you putting that character in there? No way. Cloak and Dagger. No way, man. I like Shang-Chi way better. Like, blah, 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 blah. And you get into that. So,
so a couple last questions as we wrap up here. First, what can you tease us about your upcoming Spawn reboot? Because we've heard, because it's been in the works for quite a while now. We got, is it Jamie Foxx still attached?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So is that how's the process going along with that?
Slow. Oh man, this Hollywood. It's a good thing I got a day job. I keep telling them. Good thing I got a day job. I couldn't wait around for you guys to do all this. But in the middle of last year, the producer Jason Blum from Blumhouse, was pretty tight-lipped, right? Because whenever I say anything, he always phones me, go, "Todd, I'm gonna stop talking." But he said, Spawn 2025, right? Now, it was surprising because I'm like, we don't have a studio, we don't have the script yet, right? But Jason Blum has, and like I said, from Blumhouse, Google it, you're going to see he's made hundreds of movies.
Oh yeah,
hundreds of movies, and so he knows the time frame. And I think when he said that, he wasn't saying definitively, but he just knows that there's time to do it, right? You get the script done here in the next month or two. You do the rewrites in the next month or two after that. You have a script, so you take it into Hollywood and you find a buyer and you negotiate maybe for a month or two. All right, so now you're in the middle of the year and you make your deal. Then you do 2-3 months of pre-production and getting prepped and hiring people and getting everybody in place. And then you start making a movie. And so could we be making a movie by the end of the year or early next year? Yeah. I mean, there's still plenty of time. And if you start filming a movie in even January of next year, it takes 2 months, maybe 2.5 months to film. Okay. Then it takes 2-3 months to do all the editing on it. In the meantime, the studio is doing all their marketing. They know this movie's going to come out for Halloween, let's say, and you're done with everything by the end of summer. And now you just sit back and let them advertise it until Halloween comes, and bam, here comes a movie, right? So is there time for all that? Sure there is. Sure there is, right? So will it all happen on that schedule? We don't know, because, we're all we can do is the creative end of it. And we're sort of a little bit at the mercy of the, sort of the business side and
Sure.
who gets it. But again, if there's 2 companies that are bidding on it and one of them has an opening that can get us out in that 2025, and somebody said, no, we got to bump you to 26 or 27, we'll probably take the deal that gets us out in 25.
Yeah.
Right. So, but we're all, everybody on the team, right? Got the writer of the Joker 1 and 2 on the script, along with, Malcolm Spellman, who, did the Winter Soldier and the upcoming Captain America movie.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've got, and Matt Nixon, who's in there in the mix too, but we got some heavy hitters that are working on that script, right? So it's not like, again, would I like it to have been done, 5 months ago? Yeah, but there was a writer's strike 5 months ago. They couldn't even.
Right.
So, and then there was a pandemic. So I'm used to putting out comic books every 30 days and these toys, like a lot of toys come out every month. So I'm not built for these, long development arcs that they do in Hollywood. But sadly, I'm not the only movie that will say, yeah, it took us years and years to develop before it ever came out. There are literally thousands that have that as their moniker.
Right, right.
So the upside should be that once you get the first one out the gate, and that's the toughest one.
Right.
And once you get it out the gate, if there's success, then there's no reason why, if there's success, they shouldn't come back, do a sequel, and that sequel should be able to get done like within a couple of years.
Right.
Like of that first one, bam, bam, and now you're going to start seeing a succession of them, right? So I don't know. Here we go.
So last question before I let you go here. What can you tease us for your DC Multiverse line this year? Like I said, it's Batman's 85th. I'm sure we'll see a lot more Batman coming up. Any plans you can share or at least tease?
I've got a toy idea, not necessarily a DC Multiverse idea, but I've got a toy idea that I've been talking to Warner Brothers about that I'd like to apply to the DC Multiverse. It will allow me to, I think in a cool way, bring some of the favorite characters back in a sort of a different, interesting way, a different sort of form factor, if you will. We've got our list of some of the characters that we want to bring out again to help celebrate the anniversary. I just actually approved a couple of those this week. But there's no, as I said before at the beginning, there's no shortage, right? There's no shortage of things to choose from. I would argue that the tougher thing is like, how do we limit it to this year, which is our 30th anniversary and the 85th anniversary? How do we limit it? Because we can't do it all this year. So what do we want to put out into the marketplace as all that's happening? And then again, I'm sure that because of the anniversary, there's also going to be trying to do some pretty big events in the comic book industry, right?
Yeah.
Which will, again, give us some even more new visuals that we can go, oh my gosh, right? Who knows? In 7 months, there might be a comic book that we go, man, there's 6 new toys right there, just in in that comic book story. So, for right now, I'm focused on we've got in a couple of weeks, Spawn issue 350 and then going right after that, going into literally the official counting of the 30th anniversary, because my first Toy Fair was in February, and then a couple other events in between. I mean, especially as you're heading towards San Diego, right?
Right.
We'll have, we're talking about bringing 1 or 2 exclusive toys. Haven't done that for a few years, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were one of the first to ever do that, right? And to show people you could do it. Now everybody sort of does it.
Right.
Get back to that. So yeah, there's a lot. I mean, again, we're sort of mum on what we can say and do, but there's plenty coming down the pipeline, right? There's not going to be any shortage of stuff coming from my side of the fence this year for sure.
Well, that's fantastic to hear, and congratulations for 350 issues of Spawn. That's fantastic. And
again, look, here's a great thing about time, is that it gives you sort of attrition, and attrition allows people to then go, oh, I know that company, right? McFarlane Toys. I've heard that name because it's been sort of floating around for 30 years. Oh, Spawn, right? You don't even have to collect it, but you just sort of know it, right? I mean, look at your mom probably knows who the Incredible Hulk is.
Yeah.
Probably never collected the Hulk, never bought a Hulk toy, might not have even gone to any of the movies, but she knows that he exists, right? Just through that word, being said over and look, I know things about the Kardashians, and I've never read a single article about them.
Same, yes.
But that's good. That's good branding, that even when you don't care, you still know about it, right?
Yeah.
And so we're hoping that once the word gets out that either Spawn movie coming out or the anniversary here of Batman or something else, that people go, oh man, I know those characters. Oh, they're doing something special. Oh man, I'll take a curious look, see what's there. And our job is we have to stand up and deliver, right? So.
Oh, sounds like the best job in the world. So,
no, that's the people who do South Park.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Let's make fun of anybody, anyway, anyhow. Tell as many sort of burp fart jokes we want, and get paid lots of money to do it. Like, what are you talking about? Those guys got the best job in the planet. So.
I think you're right there.
Yeah.
Todd, this has been such a blast. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing what you got cooking up this year.
All right. I appreciate the time, JJ. You have a good year, too.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the original and official podcast of the Batman on Film website. Follow BOF on Threads at The Batman on Film. Follow BOF on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Batman on Film. To keep BOF up and running, go to patreon.com/BatmanOnFilm, or you can buy BOF a beer at buymeacoffee.com/TheRealBatmanOnFilm. For Jet and everyone at BOF, I'm announcer Rachel. Authoritative, definitive, the original. Batman on Film, founded in 1998.